My name is Nick Noster with the Sheboygan Fire Department. Been with the department for about 19 and a half years. Currently, I'm a division chief. I oversee our inspection prevention bureau. The majority of what I get involved with is multifamily rental, so 3 or more. We do have jurisdiction when it comes to some ordinance stuff for smoke alarms over any residential property in the city, really any building as it pertains to safety. Um, but a lot of what we do for inspections falls with the 3 family or more. So if you own a 3 family or more, are looking at buying a 3 family or more, chances are you're going to see my name or have some interactions with me. Dealing with me, just like law enforcement, is not always a bad thing. I prefer working with people ahead of the game. If you have questions, whatever, reach out to me versus on the backside when we're finding violations and we have to deal with that. If you have a 3 family or more and we're doing inspections and you get a notification from us, don't be afraid of that. We're just doing our job enforcing safety for the property. If you have questions on those reports, please reach out to me. If we get communication, it knows we're talking, people are working on things. If we don't hear communication from people, we assume that you're blowing us off, and that never goes good for anybody. So I've been with the department since April 2006. I've held lots of positions within the department, have been in this role for about almost 6 years. The bottom of the slide there is a little bit of our departments. We have 5 stations that are staffed 24/7. We have 3 engine companies, which are at Station 1, which is right behind us, and somebody's about to go out on a call. Station 4 on the way north side, 15th and North Ave. Station 5, 18th and Wheaton Creek. We have 1 heavy rescue engine that's at Station 2, 18th and Ashland, and a heavy-duty 100-foot platform ladder, which is at Station 3, our headquarters on 25th Street across from Pick and Save. We have 4 ALS ambulances that are staffed 24/7, Stations 1, 2, 3, and 4, with a 5th reserve one at Station 5 that we could use if staffing allows. Admin-wise, we have 1 chief, 2 assistant chiefs, myself, and 3 battalion chiefs. The battalion chiefs oversee each of our 3 shifts. So our fire inspections, we do them annually, commercial properties. Again, in this context, 3 family or more residential, but otherwise we do businesses, public places, schools, churches, anything like that. We are looking at the common space. So we're not going in individual tenant spaces, just the common space where anybody could be in. We are identifying life safety hazards. There are tens of thousands of fire codes that are out there. Our list has about 65 that we're generally looking for. Mainly dealing with smoke alarms, fire alarm systems. So are they present if they're supposed to be? Are they tested? Are they being maintained? Exiting, can people get to the exits? Are the exits functional? If there are exit signs, exit lighting, is it operational? Electrical safety, we see a lot of improper use of extension cords being used in place of permanent wiring. Older homes in the city don't have as many outlets, have older electrical systems. So somebody might need a dehumidifier in the basement, and they're going to put it where the drain is so that it can drain right down the drain. There's not an outlet nearby, so it's just easy for them to take an extension cord, run it across the basement, loop it up in the rafters or over piping, and then to the dehumidifier. Not safe because, number 1, it's being used in place of permanent wiring. Extension cords aren't meant to be used long term. Number 2, most people go get the cheapest extension cord power strip they can find, and it's not designed to be used with hydro appliances like that. So anytime we see extension cords that are through walls, under doors, over walls, affixed to the structure, it's in place of permanent wiring, not allowed. HVAC systems, we're making sure that those are safe. Older buildings that have heating appliances prior to 2002 that are open combustion should be in isolation of hazard rooms. Combustible storage, just making sure there's not too much buildup of combustibles that could cause a problem. And then access to the property. Are there blocked alleys, blocked utilities, buildup of exterior combustibles? Can we get to the property to do our job if we need to? When it comes to smoke detectors, smoke alarms, carbon monoxide detectors, the age of the building will dictate the specific requirements. A home you build today will have different requirements than a home that was built 100 years ago or 40 years ago. In general, they should be in the basement, on each floor, and in the areas of the bedrooms. In general, any building that has sleeping in it should have some sort of smoke alarms in it. 3 family or more with a common space should require interconnected smoke alarms. So that means if one goes off, they all go off. If you build a home today, every smoke alarm that's in it is going to be interconnected, and that's if something happens in the basement, you're on the second floor, you know that something's happening in the basement. Carbon monoxide needed with fuel burning appliances. So if you have electric water heater, electric heat, electric stove, you're not going to need carbon monoxide. If you have gas burning appliances, you'll need them. Basement and on each floor. Carbon monoxide is neutral buoyant, so it doesn't really rise, it doesn't really sink, it just kind of drifts and floats where it wants to, which is why it's going to be on each floor. Any of those, recommend changing the batteries twice a year if they have batteries. Otherwise, 10-year sealed units are recommended. People can't take the batteries out, tenants can't tamper with them. Recommend a functional test monthly. Required functional test annually with documentation if you have that 3 family or more. So 3 family or more, when we come and do our inspections, we're looking for some sort of record that the smoke alarms in the common spaces are being tested. On our website, we do have a kind of a recommended form. It's just essentially an Excel spreadsheet to log the date, the location of the unit, and initials of who tested it. We just want to make sure that they're being maintained. Landlord tenant agreement, the attorney's going to talk about it also, but I'll touch on it. Really from my side of it, they are to protect both the tenant and the landlord. So as the landlord, you must provide working smoke alarms to your tenants in their residential space. And the way it protects you is you have this landlord tenant agreement, you show them that the smoke alarm is functioning, and after that, it's on the tenant to maintain that alarm. If you have a landlord tenant agreement and you have that and showed that you tested it for them, and we get called back that they were tampering with it, it's not up, it's not functioning, you did your part, now it's their fault, and we can issue citations for that. Especially, it would get really messy if you provided it for them, they tampered with it, something happened, and that had a negative impact. Whether someone died, was injured, whatever it might be, that's going to help you as a landlord. The way it protects the tenant is it shows that you provided them with working ones when they moved in, which is required. The attorney may share more information on that when he's up here, but that's the basics of it. Helps us provide enforcement activities if people are tampering with them. You guys should have some information sheets in your stuff as far as smoke alarms, smoke detectors, carbon monoxide. If you have any questions about your property specific, please feel free to reach out. Every house in this city, the layout's a little bit different, so specific locations of them is going to be a little bit different. Miscellaneous fire safety, fire extinguishers recommended, 1 per unit. That is in the private spaces. If you have a multifamily, 3 units or more, there has to be 1 in the common space. No more than 75 feet of travel to any additional ones. So again, depending upon the layout of the property, you might have to have more than 1. You have some information on that. Super boxes, Knox boxes. This is a secure box that only the fire department has a key for. It allows property owners to have keys for the property for emergency use. So it might be on the outside of the building, might have keys to allow us to get into your building to do our fire inspection. Some places have a master key where the main door is keyed the same as the apartment doors for us. Some places, every apartment is different, the entry door is different, and we have multiple keys in the boxes. We will always find a way to get in the building if we need to. It's just how much damage ends up being done that way. If we have to do our inspection, we're not going to be breaking down a door to get in to do an inspection. We're going to call you, try and schedule something. But when it comes to an emergency, if we have access to those keys, we can use those to get in. Otherwise, we'll find a way to get in. Open burning grilling. The ordinance is up there. You should have information in there. Really just keep track of your property. Make sure if people are having bonfires that they're staying at least 10 feet away from the buildings. No grills on porches, upper balconies, stuff like that. Again, keeping your property safe. You'll notice a common theme through all the presenters today that if you're an active participant in your property, you don't just have a property, collect the rent check, don't ever go to it. If you're a present property owner and landlord, that really minimizes your problems that you can have. Any questions? All right, my contact information's in there. If you have any questions at all, inspections, fire safety stuff, don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Hello. Hey, I'm Scott Whelan with the Sheboygan County Sheriff's Office. I'm a detective with the Sheriff's Office. I'm a general assignment detective, but I have a focus with human trafficking. And I'm also a member of the Sheboygan County Human Trafficking Task Force. Actually, that's not totally true. I kind of retired from them a couple weeks ago because I'm nearing my own retirement in a few months. So I'll let the new guy kind of take over for my spot. But anyway, thanks for being here. Thanks for having me. The fact that you guys are here, I think, says a lot about your willingness to learn and also have a good community that we can all be a part of, right? So, human trafficking, what should you know about it? Well, I've got 10 minutes to try to give you an education, but the Wisconsin state statute defines human trafficking as recruiting, enticing, harboring, transporting, providing, or obtaining of an individual for a commercial sex act or labor or attempt to do so. So, oftentimes when we think of human trafficking, we think of sex trafficking, and in presentations, we oftentimes talk about that. But we shouldn't forget about labor trafficking. You know, we're in the state of Wisconsin, right, with all the dairy farms. To think that all these illegal aliens are coming over and they're not being exploited in some form or fashion. I'm not saying the farmer necessarily, could be, but it could also be, you know, the mule, as they put it, that brought them over. You know, there's a debt that they have to repay, and that's human trafficking, right? But sex trafficking is something that, as a task force, we're more in tune with. It's more of what we investigate. The labor trafficking, maybe it's a language barrier issue. It's just not something that is brought to our attention very often. So we don't deal a lot with it, unfortunately. So, human trafficking is kind of boiled down to means of force, fraud, and coercion. People are forced into this situation. It could be physically, it could be through manipulation. It all boils down to manipulation. And it's something to keep in mind when you're, well, I guess let me ask you this. How many people on their lease ask for everybody that's a resident in that apartment or home to be listed on their lease? How many people do that? Show of hands. Okay. I would highly recommend that because that holds them accountable, right? It knows, you know, like the Meg unit mentioned, you can look at CCAP and see who's all in your residence that you're renting out. It helps you if you have a problem when you call and reach out to law enforcement. We have, you know, the ability to look into that individual and get a feel for who they are. Maybe they have some active warrants, that type of thing. And we can help you better in that way. So I would highly recommend having each individual listed on a lease. Yeah. Including kids or under 18? I would say kids. You know, there's nothing wrong with asking that, right? And kids grow up. So if they're with you for 5 years, even though they were a juvenile before, and now they're an adult, and kids can be kids and get into trouble, right?
I think you have a legal right once they're 18, they have to provide their social security number, something like that.
Okay.
Under 18, they can be listed, but they don't have to provide.
Okay. Thank you for that. These rules I don't know, but I know you can ask the question, and if they don't want to provide it, they don't, you know. But in this case, if you have a legal, you know, something you can draw on and enforce, I would recommend it for certain. Power and control. That's what, you know, there's a manipulation aspect, and it's all about power and control. These are individuals that are taking advantage of others to profit from them. And it's done through a number of means. You know, isolation is one of the bigger ones where they try to isolate the person from their family members, people that would be able to talk some sense into them. It could be through physical abuse, you know, where they're forced into the situation. If you're like me, God help us all that you're not, but you have a hard time wrapping your head around why somebody is involved in human trafficking, why they don't just run away and walk away from the situation. So it is a difficult thing, but it's through this manipulation, it's through power and control that they're able to control their victims. Oftentimes they don't feel like they're being victimized. So, what are they exploiting? What are they manipulating? The vulnerabilities. We've all had vulnerabilities throughout our lives in different ways, right? I call it the hole in your soul, that the trafficker looks to seek and find, right? These guys are expert manipulators, just like many criminals, and they're expert at exploiting vulnerabilities in people. That's what they're looking for. One of the things I do is I'm on the juvenile runaway at risk and high risk group, and it's geared towards trafficking. But we look at the runaways, right? Because we know through experience that kids that run away multiple times in a short time oftentimes fall victim to a trafficker, somebody that's wanting to exploit their vulnerabilities. Now, kids, they don't run to something, they're running away from something typically, right? Because home life is not good. Maybe they're being sexually assaulted at home. Maybe they're being abused at home. So they're running from something typically, and the traffickers look for these types of things to exploit and take advantage of and profit from, And it goes on. There's all the rings that kind of overlap, as you can see in the slide, because people can have multiple vulnerabilities that are being exploited at one given time or another. So what do they do? At home you might have a history of abuse. What does the trafficker promise you? A relationship. They could be that Romeo, the guy that brings them on dates and wines and dines them, gives them gifts and flowers and candy and all that stuff, only to exploit them later on down the road. It's not really a boyfriend girlfriend situation. It's a trafficking situation. I mentioned the runaway. This gives them a shelter, a place to go and have food, and their other needs are met. Once again, the trafficker is able to make that promise. Maybe they're homeless. They have economic struggles. The trafficker will promise them the ability to make money. Hey, we can make a lot of money together. We just got to do this, this, and this. And it sounds good at first until you're in the reality of it's called the life. People that are being trafficked refer to it as the life of trafficking, being trafficked. Marginalization, hear on the news all the time about active shooters and different people acting out. Why? Maybe they've been marginalized as a kid or as an adult. And so they're looking for acceptance, or in that case, active shooter recognition. But everybody wants importance, right? And the trafficker can offer that to them. So, just to touch on a few of these, why don't they identify? Shame or guilt. Many of the situations start with social media in the aspect of kids or adults. But let's say, and I don't know why kids nowadays they share nude photos and images. Maybe it's a girlfriend boyfriend situation at the time, but then that relationship sours, and maybe the boy shares the nude images of the girl, and then he comes back, hey, or even before that, he'll say, if you don't do this and this and this, I'm going to share these images with your family, your schoolmates, that type of thing. Now you have to come and have sex with me. Now you have to have sex with my friends. And it just snowballs out of control, to a point where they're so ashamed, have so much guilt that they feel like they wouldn't be accepted by their own family anymore. And so now they're involved in the life of trafficking. And these things happen. Psychological manipulation. We all know people that are have issues with mental health, or maybe they're simple-minded and they can be easily exploited and taken advantage of. So these are some of the things when you're renting to individuals, or even not, just out on the street. that you should be looking for, some signs to look for, to consider. Um, People that are vulnerable are the ones that are being taken advantage of. So how can you help? Being here is a big part of it, right? That awareness aspect, just knowing that human trafficking is a thing. There's a lot of people that think, not in Sheboygan County, that doesn't happen. I'm here to tell you it does, right? I investigate these things. It happens more than we know. It's the crime that happens in plain view. It's not easily recognized, right? But I know when we do sting operations, like when we have bigger events like the Ryder Cup or NASCAR, we'll do sting operations. I call them John operations. Johns are the ones that are the sex buyers because we feel if we take one of the components out, that being the sex buyer, then we collapse the whole system, at least to some degree, for that day or that moment, right? The Johns are easier to pick up through sex ads. Post sex ads, and the Johns respond, and then we go and meet up. They think they're meeting this beautiful woman or whatever, or a little boy, and it ends up being me, and we hook them up and take them to jail. So just being aware that these things are out there is important. Trust your instincts. How many times in life have we not trusted our instincts and then we're like, damn it. I wish I would have listened to myself and just taken action. I wish I would have called the police or whatever. Feel free to call 911. There's nothing wrong with that. If you see something maybe at a gas station, Love's truck stop, whatever, maybe it's just a little squabble, husband and wife, but I don't know, your instincts tell you a little different. Give us a call. We'll identify the individual, see what's up, and who knows, it might be a human trafficking situation. You can always support the groups that are working with victims. Safe Harbor here locally advocates for the victims. RAISE, which is Runaway Youth Services, they're kind of the boots on the ground, is what I refer to it, working with the youth of Sheboygan County and trying to keep them from a life of trouble, but also a life of human trafficking. And they're part of our juvenile at-risk group. Lakeshore Child Advocacy Center, we have a new satellite location on 8th Street. Actually, it's in the same building as, what do they call it? Uptown? No, Social. Thank you. It's in that same building, and they help law enforcement conduct forensic interviews of kids because kids are very prone to, you know, being guided in an interview, and law enforcement, we're not great because we're trying to get to the answer right away. So they work with us, they help us, and they're a great resource for us. So please, support them if you can. And then the Sheboygan County Human Trafficking Task Force, our main role is just this, bringing awareness to human trafficking to the public, and doing outreach, that type of thing. It's just a component of trying to stop human trafficking in Sheboygan County. And being a good witness if you do see something at the gas station. Maybe you can see a plate number, maybe you can take a picture with your phone without being obvious about it. Don't put yourself in harm's way, of course, but just be aware that you may get called to court if you're the one that makes that phone call. You're a witness to that crime. So keep those things in mind. Again, just some resources that you can reach out to. I think it'll be in your pamphlets, if I'm not mistaken. How are we doing for time? We're okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Last slide. Just some areas that traffickers utilize to get to their victims. I mentioned the social media component. There's so many different apps. I don't even know half of them. They're ever changing. I know my kids still use Discord, so they can talk to their buddies while they're gaming. But Discord has been utilized for human trafficking. They're building these relationships. It might be a 40-year-old and they portray to be a 14-year-old, and they're trying to make these relationships and meet up with these juveniles and take advantage of them, of course. I mentioned the runaway population, OnlyFans, again, kind of a social media thing. This is kind of moved to some degree from a prostitution type situation where some people are making more money just doing videos of sex acts, that type of thing. So, but those people are oftentimes being exploited elsewhere as well. Strip clubs, video, toy stores, all these things. The traffickers look for areas, like in the case of juveniles. How many times do we hear about, um, coaches getting involved with sex acts and stuff with underage people, or if you've heard of the Boy Scout thing, and traffickers are doing the same thing. They're looking for areas of vulnerability, young people, that type of thing. So, any questions? Anything I can help answer? Cool. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so my name is Lene. I am with Building Inspection Department. I have been in that department for about 5 years. So as we go along, if you guys have any questions, just stop me, let me know, and I can see if I can help answer it. So this is our department. Taylor is our department head. The city of Sheboygan is split up between north side and south side. So we have a north side building inspector and a south side building inspector. Penn Avenue is the dividing line. So anything north of Penn is obviously north side, south is going to be south side. It really comes to play for the building inspectors. The electrical and plumbing inspectors cover the entire city. And then we also have a code enforcement officer, Nicole. She's in the back. She looks more at the housing, the exterior of the housing, so roofs, siding, windows, that kind of stuff. Sometimes parking, and then we also work with PD as well. And then our office staff, we have 3 people, myself, Gary, and Savannah. So with owning a property, you are allowed to do some work. And just to clarify, this is geared towards 1 and 2 family residents. So with the state of Wisconsin, they do require a credential, which is the dwelling contractor. And that allows the landlord to do work on their own property that they don't reside in. And that credential is needed. So anytime you guys come in for a building permit, that is what we're going to be looking up. Next slide. So what things require a permit? We have building, electrical, and plumbing. There's lists there. If you guys have questions, please let us know. Call us, email, and we can help answer what requires a permit. Some items, even fences, it requires a permit because there's an inspection that's required. And then, can I do the work myself, or do I need to hire a contractor? On there, it provides ideas of, can I do the work as building when it comes to the mechanical, so the electrical, plumbing, HVAC, that stuff you need to hire a contractor for. And most of the time, permits are required. So once again, if you have questions, just let us know. We can go ahead and answer those. For anything accessory buildings, we don't need any credentials, but permits are required. So accessory buildings are like storage sheds, freestanding decks, fences. You don't need to have that state credential, but we need permits because inspections are required for them. And then just to go through the permitting process, when you apply for a permit, it doesn't mean that you automatically have that permit. Sometimes there's reviews that are needed, and documents that are needed to go along with that permit application. So with the decks, we have like a deck framing plan. We need to know, how is that deck being built? Is it going to be sturdy enough? What's supporting it? Where is it going? Same thing with the fence. We need to know where the fence is, the height of the fence, the make of the fence, because there are ordinances that we do need to follow as far as that. So like a fence, for example, can be right up to the property line. In most cases, it can be 6 foot high. If you have a corner lot, then we have more regulations about it. And then once that permit application is submitted, then we do staff review, and then we can go ahead and issue the permit. And then you just work directly with the inspector to schedule those inspections. Okay, any questions? Perfect.
Questions. My name is Corrado Cirillo. I work for the law firm of Olson, Cloyd, Gunderson, and Conway, which is located right across the street from the courthouse at 602 West 6th Street in Sheboygan. I've been doing landlord tenant law since 2007 when I moved up here from Milwaukee. Prior to that, I did a lot of construction litigation. First thing you do when you go to rent a place is you want to screen your prospective tenants. Why do you want to screen your prospective tenants? You want to know what their monthly income is, their occupation, their rental history, their credit information. You want to examine the court records they may have if they've had a history of evictions. Is everyone here familiar with CCAP? And like I said, I'm going to go a little bit fast to fit this all in the time, okay? And you also get to ask for their social security number. But why do you want this information? I'm being proactive and asking you guys a question. So you know who you're renting to and that they're not going to be the tenant from hell. That's why, okay? Just to be real plain. Rental agreements and forms. Always use a rental agreement. Do not ever not use a rental agreement. And the reason why is the rental agreement will be the contract that controls the agreement you have with your tenant. Also, because the law under both Chapter ATCP 134 of the Wisconsin Administrative Code and Chapter 704 of the Wisconsin statutes require certain provisions to be in the lease. Certain protections to both in case of a domestic violence incident, certain protections in case there's a crime that happens there that you can't simply evict someone for a crime happening on your premises, and things of that nature, as well as a plethora of other reasons. Always use a lease. I highly recommend you use a lease from either Wisconsin Legal Blank, which is a place down in Milwaukee. They're on the internet. They update their leases every year with the new laws that are passed. Similarly, you can use the Wisconsin Realtors Association for their legal forms too. And Wisconsin Legal Blank has more than just leases. They have check-in sheets, they have rules and regulations, all those type of things. Okay? So it has rental renewal agreements, check-in, like I said, rules and regulations, non-standard provisions. Is anyone here not familiar with non-standard provisions are? Non-standard provisions cannot be in the lease, but must be separate from the lease itself. Okay, it must be a separate signed piece of document by the tenant and by the landlord also. Also, you can get accounting. Does anyone know what accounting is? Accounting for the security deposit when a person leaves or vacates the premises. You have 21 days after a person leaves the premises if they've been evicted, or if they vacated voluntarily, to provide an accounting of what you're doing with their security deposit. Whether you're withholding anything for back rent due, whether you're withholding anything for damages, whether you're withholding anything for cleanup, okay? You have to let them know and mail it to them within 21 days after they've vacated. So if they vacate on September 30th, you count the 30th as day one, so you got until October 20th to get it to them. If you don't, guess what happens? Their security deposit doubles. You have to pay them twice as much for not getting it to them on time under the law. Okay. You send it to their last known address and you make sure to record it, date it, and take a picture of the envelope. Always be safe. I'm here to teach you the pitfalls of being a landlord, okay? And also to let tenants know that what their rights are as well. So, any questions regarding rental agreements and forms? And where to find them? Okay, there's disclosures and recommendations that I always make. The disclosures are necessary. Okay, smoke detector notice, that's required as to where the smoke detector is, that it's working, and that you show them that it's working. That was already covered by the person from our fine Sheboygan Fire Department. That's important that you let them know if there's more than one smoke detector, like if it's a 2-level premises where you got a second floor, that you have one on each floor. Lead paint disclosure form and booklet. That's something that comes from the the United States federal government, that you got to disclose lead paint. That's been happening since 1978. And there's a form for that too. Carbon monoxide notice, that's similar to the smoke detector notice. You got to let them know where it is and let them know that it's working, or show them that it's working. Usually the carbon monoxide detectors nowadays, you can buy one that's portable or mountable on the wall, and it has an internal battery that lasts for 10 years, and then you just replace it after 10 years. If you have agents working for you, and when I mean agents, I'm not talking secret agents or anything like that, someone working on your behalf, like a handyman that responds to calls for repairs, you gotta identify them to the tenant. So that way they know that this person can get entrance if you provide the proper notice to enter to fix something, and they know who this is, so they can identify themselves. I recommend that tenants obtain renter's insurance, and I recommend you tell your tenants get renter's insurance. That protects them if something is damaged due to a flood, a leak, or a fire, their own personal property. I also recommend that you provide your tenants a fire extinguisher. It's cheaper to repair a building that's been on fire when a person has a fire extinguisher and gets it out in the first minute than waiting for the fire department to get there 10 minutes later. I know that from experience. Questions? There are always small little details that trip up landlords. These are some of them. Okay, entry by a landlord for an inspection of the premises requires advance notice and is to be conducted at reasonable times. That means knocking on your tenant's door at 3 a.m. in the morning is not reasonable. Okay, somewhere between 9 a.m. all the way to 8 p.m. I think is reasonable, and most courts would consider that to be reasonable. Advance notice means at least 12 hours. I recommend 24 hours. Because if you provide a notice at 5 p.m., they may think you're coming back at 5 a.m., which I think would be unreasonable. The water heater thermostat setting serving the premises is supposed to be no higher than 125 degrees. Tell me all, raise your hand if you knew that, all the landlords here. Awesome. Now, sometimes you can't have it at 125 degrees because it may be an older water heater and it's at 140. Then you got to keep it at its lowest level. If it's 140, it's 140. You're supposed to maintain the temperature. If you're controlling your utilities and you're paying for utilities, not your tenant, you have to maintain at least 67 degrees. 67 degrees means in the center of each room at each point. That's hard to do. I'm telling you right now. I can't do it in my house, so, but I'm just letting you know. So that means maybe you want to keep it just a tad warmer, like at 68. Tenant's personal property. This is a big tripping point for a lot of landlords. The law changed. I can't say recently. I want to say it was like 2017, if I'm not mistaken, or possibly. A lot of changes were made under Governor Walker's administration, where the legislature did a lot of stuff to move things more towards the tenants, to the landlord's favor. Excuse me. And I'm not getting political there. That's just analysis that's just true. But anyway, if you have an up-to-date lease, you do not have to hold on to the personal property of a tenant that abandons it. You can get rid of it at your discretion, okay? And because the modern leases have that, if it's abandoned, your discretion, landlord's discretion. And it also says in the lease, we will not store any personal property you leave behind. If you have those two things in your lease, which all modern leases have, you're good. If you don't have a modern lease and you have an old lease, or you don't have a lease, you got to hold on to that property under the old 2009-2010 law at 704.05, and then in a little parentheses another 5. And there's 3 ways you got to do it. One of them includes after you sell the personal property, you can only use it for back rent or damages. No, you can't use it for back rent or damages. You can only use it for the storage fee. Excuse me, I misspoke there. And if there's any remaining money, even if they owe you rent or back rent or damages, you got to actually send it to Madison to help the needy under the old law. Use a modern lease, okay? And that's why it says there you do not want to use the old procedure that was in place in 2009. Sex offender registry. Is there anyone familiar with sex offender registry and its requirements? Okay, this is basically, these 2 pages, number 7 and 8, are going to tell you everything you need to know. A landlord or its agents are not required to provide a tenant or prospective tenant with information regarding whether a person is required to register as a sex offender. And then you have the big unless, where you know about it. Then you got to provide this information. But you avoid that altogether if you include that provision, that second provision where it says example, and it says notice you may obtain information about sex offender registry and persons registered with the registry by contacting the Wisconsin Department of Corrections on the internet, providing them the internet site as well as the phone number. So that's how you protect yourself. You can put that on a separate sheet of paper when you're giving them all those forms. Questions? Has anyone been through the eviction process here in Sheboygan? And this is only for Sheboygan, because each county has their own little picadillos. Through the eviction process where you had to sue someone to get a judgment for eviction. Okay, yes? Okay, then you know how it works here. For those who do not know how it works there, you got to start the eviction process by giving a notice, a legal notice. It's either a 5-day notice because they didn't pay rent or they got to cure a breach, such as they started smoking on the inside of the building when their lease says there's no smoking. If they correct that, they get to stay. Or if they pay rent within the 5 days, they get to stay. There's a 14-day notice that terminates tenancy for failure to pay rent or cure breach, and you can use that if you have a 1-year lease or less. They've already gotten a 5-day notice. They corrected it, but they did it again like 3 months later during the lease period. Okay, and now you don't give them the chance to correct it, to cure. So that's what a 14-day notice is. You can also use that if it's a month-to-month lease. Okay. The last one is I shouldn't say the last one. The next one is a 28-day notice. That has to be served so that the last day of the 28 days is at the end of a rental period. Here's a question for you. If you have a month-to-month lease, what's got to be the last day of the rental period? a month, right? So it's at the end of the month. So if you serve it on October 3rd for October 31st, you're good. If you serve it on October 4th for October 31st, you're not good because you got to give at least 28 days. Okay? So that's a little bit of math you should know. Okay? Any questions? Finally, there's the 30-day notice. That's for a lease of more than 1 year. Okay? And that's a little bit different because of a lease for 1 year, the tenant gets, I won't say necessarily more rights, but more chances to correct. So if they correct within that 30 days, you don't then get to go to that 14 day when they do it again. They get another 30 days. Just so you know. Questions? I'm going really fast here, so that's why I asked. The eviction process in Sheboygan, after you do the legal notice and they don't get out, the tenant does not leave, you have to start a lawsuit. The lawsuit is going to be both a judgment for eviction and or damages. Okay? You have to file a summons and complaint in small claims court. It's Form 500 for small claims for a summons and complaint. There is what's called a return date or initial appearance. It used to be that both parties had to appear. Nowadays, it's because of COVID, they changed it somewhat. The defendant has to appear and file an answer, or call and say, look, I can't file an answer, but I'll get it done within 3 days. Then they allow that. So yeah, they get a couple of chances for the defendant, the tenant. They will then schedule a hearing on that, and if they file an answer, if the tenants file an answer, they will the court commissioner will schedule a hearing. That usually is by phone nowadays. It's rare that it's done in person. If you get your judgment of eviction, the next thing you got to do is pay $5 to the clerk of courts. You ask for a writ of restitution, and you can then walk that over to the sheriff's department, and they will post or serve that on the door or to the person directly. And usually the writ of restitution costs $75. In Winnebago County, it costs $100. In other county, it's also different in other counties too. So, and the sheriff will post that on the door. It'll provide notice to the tenant, letting them know when they got to be out, and they'll usually call you. The sheriff's department will call you and let you know what's going on. Because if they're not out by that day and you call them, they'll come back on that day to guide them out, to help them get out. Okay. After that, if you're also claiming damages, you will get a date from the court for a pretrial conference mediation date, and that's usually with Commissioner Susan Schnabel. That's done nowadays mostly by phone also. The hearing will be done in person. So, any questions on the procedure used? Oh, and by the way, if attorney's fees are an issue, that means they're suing you back in a counterclaim for what they did wrong, and then it'll go to one of the judges, one of the 5 judges we have here. And they're all very fine judges. Now, if you look at that, it says most recent laws, and it says 2017. How could that be most recent when it's 2025? Well, you have a legislature that is controlled by one party, and you have the governorship that's controlled by the other party. So they haven't passed a lot of laws recently as far as landlord-tenant laws that are super significant. These were considered significant at the time they were passed because it did some important things. It defined what is a habitability violation. When is a premises not habitable? And it's right there. The statute is right there on the side. You can see it. It provides additional protections to landlords from local ordinances. Why would they pass laws to protect landlords from local ordinances? Any guesses? Anybody? Has anyone litigated a landlord-tenant case in Madison, Wisconsin, in Dane County? Madison has a whole slew of local ordinances that are extremely protective of the young populations that's there for college, and they have to rent from landlords. So they're very protective of that. So, and Madison was just going overboard in some instances in some people's minds. So they passed this this law to prevent that from going overboard. So it changed the laws on what is an emotional support animal or a service animal. And there is a difference. And please be sure to note if you have a tenant that says they have an emotional support animal or a service animal, that is not a pet and you cannot charge a pet fee. Okay? That would be a violation of the Disability Act, the ADA from 1991. So credit and background checks, it allows you to charge $25. It allows electronic delivery of certain notices to include the counting of the security deposit. And it allows eviction notices by certified mail within the county, not necessarily. And some counties don't even go for that, just so you know. So like I said, it allows for it. It doesn't mean it's required. Let me put it that way. The Wisconsin Administrative Code Chapter ATCP 134 is called Residential Rental Practices. They took every provision that was in this code and put it into Chapter 704 of the Wisconsin statutes. This resides in the Wisconsin Administrative Code. Be aware of both because they're important. And this still holds sway. It is still applicable because it identifies all the type of provisions that are not allowed in a rental agreement. Such as putting in your rental agreement that the tenant will be responsible for your attorney's fees if you win. That is a no-no. I mean, there was a major case that happened right after I got out of law school in 2001 here in Wisconsin, which, let's put it this way, the tenant breached the lease, the landlord sued, and the tenant sued back and asked for their attorney's fees because they had that provision. They got their attorney's fees plus about $8,000. So it's the McBayroll-Taggart case if you really want to look it up. Questions? I went really fast on that one, so I apologize. I would have liked to have gone longer, but due to time constraints. Any questions? Thank you very much.
So quiet. Very lively today. Good afternoon, everyone. We get to actually do a really cool part. This is our first time being here, so thank you so much for inviting us. We get to talk a lot about resources and partnership and the coalitions that exist for both landlords and for tenants. So we are here to talk about landlords, tenants, and the Lakeshore Housing Coalition, and we'll explain what that is exactly in a little bit, and how we can partner and work together.
Well, I guess I should introduce myself too. That would be important. I'm Lyric. I'm the current supportive housing program director for Lakeshore CAP. I am in a transition phase of leaving Lakeshore CAP and becoming the program and resource director of the Sheboygan County Warming Center, something along those lines. And I serve currently as the backbone, and so Lakeshore CAP serves as the backbone of the Lakeshore Housing Coalition, and we kind of keep like the structure of that housing coalition going, and then kind of moving the pieces forward and making sure we're meeting like state and federal requirements.
Awesome. And I don't know if I actually will need this either. I don't know, because we're going to talk a lot back and forth, so passing it back and forth. So my name is Abby Reese. I work at Lakeshore Community Healthcare, actually, and I'm the advocacy and outreach coordinator there. And I actually chair the Lakeshore Housing Coalition. We'll talk about that service area, but you're probably likewise the community health center at the table of housing. Housing impacts the health of our community, everybody living here. And as you'll see, we'll talk about later too, our partners that sit on these coalitions, they're from all different sectors. So luckily, we have a lot of resources to provide you as landlords. Say, if you are struggling with a tenant, that you can circle back to us and be like, hey, do you have one of these people that are partnering with you in your coalition, and how can we get this tenant help or support that they need?
And we're really here to just support and make sure that as landlords and tenants that everybody has access to safe and equitable housing, that laws are being followed or support resources are being given, whether it's a landlord that needs support or.
I didn't know, do you need the mic?
No, I can talk loud enough. Can everybody
no.
hear me?
No.
You can absolutely hear me.
I cannot hear you.
There's another mic there. Yeah, that's what he was saying.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, perfect.
So it's just to make sure that everybody has access. So our mission is to lead and encourage collaboration between county and statewide initiatives, advocate for housing stability, and promote fair practices in addressing housing needs in Sheboygan, Manitowoc, Kewaunee, and Door counties. Our vision is that all people in Sheboygan, Manitowoc, Kewaunee, Door have access to safe, affordable, low barrier housing, regardless of their background or personal circumstances.
Awesome. And we really want to emphasize access there, right? So we're not trying to force people into doing anything, but we believe that all people have access. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the structure of the Lakeshore Housing Coalition. As you noticed, it's 4 counties wide, so we're here to support you if you serve multiple counties or more than one of those counties. But they're also connected to different county coalitions. So the Lakeshore Housing Coalition was really developed, I want to say, about 7 or 8 years ago by an agency called the Wisconsin Balanced Estate. So the Wisconsin Balanced Estate oversees all homeless and homeless prevention funding. That's permanent housing funding throughout the state of Wisconsin, besides Racine, Dane, and Milwaukee counties. So they forced kind of the coalitions into multiple county areas. And so the Lakeshore Housing Coalition was those 4 counties. However, all 4 of those counties have very different housing needs. So there are county level coalitions at the Sheboygan level, Manitowoc level, Kewaunee level, and then there's a basic needs coalition in Door County as well. Lyric and I are both from Sheboygan County. I was very, very invested in the development of the Sheboygan County Housing Coalition. So we're both here as well if you need us just in Sheboygan County.
Yes. And we're both still in the Sheboygan County Housing Coalition. Abby participates in it. I'm the current chair. So if anything Sheboygan County related is needed, we are there for support as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think a lot of what these teams are working on a lot of times is advocacy. We're working on public awareness about the housing issues that exist in our communities. We're working on partnerships, right? And so landlords are a key piece of that I think we've kind of been missing. And so we would love landlords to be at the table because we know diverse solutions are the best solutions, and we'd love to be at the table to help you as much as possible.
So just some kind of key data points and why this matters in Sheboygan, and that why we're here after listening to Abby and I talk about things that might not matter to you. So currently the Sheboygan County has 117,930 people living here. 28% of those people in the county are renter occupied. And in the county as well, as of 2025, from the date we sent Jeff the slides, I can't remember when it was, but a couple weeks ago, there was over 221 evictions filed in this county. And because, like I said, we have this special thing going at the Lakeshore, that is specific information given to the coalition as a whole on the court filed evictions that were provided. So we can access who filed that eviction, if there's a trend in landlords in filing that. They sometimes provide us the reasoning behind that eviction being filed. So it just kind of depends on what's available and what they can provide us.
We also want to point out, so we know not just rent, but housing is more expensive now. But for every $100 increase in rent, there's estimated to be a 9% increase in homelessness. So I know there's been a lot of conversation around we see a lot more homelessness in our community. Part of that is it's more expensive, right? It's very expensive. And then, so I heard earlier there was a lot about individuals with really complex big issues. And this is something that it's going to happen, right? Being a landlord, housing is a basic need. And so you have people who really need that, and regardless of their circumstances, you're going to have somebody in your unit at some point who's probably going to have some really complex issues and needs that help. And so we want to make sure that when we're thinking about it, we're not just thinking about it as in like, this is a bad person. We want to think about it as how can we support people to do the best that they possibly can. And so we have programs through our partners that provide case management and support to those tenants that might need that. But we also want to point out part of the reason that rent is so expensive in this community is that last I knew, and this may have changed, this was a meeting maybe a month ago, that the alder person that was at this meeting said that there was a 0.5% rental vacancy rate in the city of Sheboygan. A healthy rental vacancy rate is 4 to 7%. So that's actually what we want to see, but there's such a lack of housing in our community.
All right, so I kind of get like the benefits and understanding all of this and why it's important to participate. And mostly because it gets into a lot of like collaborations with local organizations. And when you call a local organization, you're like, why is my tenant not getting help from you? I get the handy part of explaining all of this. So a key piece is when you're participating in coalitions, you get to understand the resources available to you because we're all there. It's a monthly meeting where all the resources are. You get to find out about what's changing in program policy, why are people accessing it, what's happening in it. If some of you have been landlords for a long time, you're familiar about the WERA program and how we just like threw money at rental assistance. That does not typically happen. That is a one-of-a-kind program that's unique. We've never had it again. We spent the money down. But we still get calls, and I mean, I did that program 2.5 years ago about that program specifically and wanting rental assistance. So when you participate in these coalitions, you know what's happening, you understand it, you hear things, you know how to better serve your tenants. Like when somebody is behind in rent, how can you get them rental assistance and making sure they're paying rent? And there's programs available. So for example, Lakeshore Cap just got a program that can pay 6 months of back road rent and any other fees that were accrued during that time. So if you were in the coalition and participating and hearing things, you would know that. And you can tell your clients that, hey, this program's available, first come, first serve, go get it. It's only a 4-page application too. The other piece is that you learn that there are program restrictions. So because it's federal money or state money, they limit how much we can pay in rent. So when you're charging $1,300 for a 2-bedroom, we can only pay it. The fair market rent standard just changed, so I think it's only $975. So can't really help somebody if that rent's over that price. The other piece of that is we had lovely people talking about maintaining your units, taking care of them, updating things. Those programs all require units to be at minimum habitable and at a higher level pass like a housing quality standard inspection. So your units will have to be, like we will go in and inspect them and make sure, and then we'll let you know. And we've had to file reports with the city a couple times because we went into units where instead of having flooring, it was just a dirt floor. And that's not a standard of living. So essentially you learn these things, you know what's happening, we can support you there. We know a program's happening that can maybe help you rehab units. And then it also offers tenant support and loan support.
I just want to mention too that we do, I think like you will have kind of like a support system behind you, right? Like, so you will have within a coalition now, I think it's really difficult. There's this back and forth between like tenant support and landlord support. And we would love to have more landlords at the table as well, just so that we can be like, this is what's happening on this side. And so we can have deeper conversations about how can we actually solve problems with it really benefiting everybody who's involved. And I think landlords have the biggest at stake, right, when it comes to housing or rental properties. And I also just want to mention really quick, I think it was on the last slide as well. We do have, Sheboygan has a tenants association. So it's called Tenants Together. You can just look it up on Facebook. So they meet the third Wednesday of every month from 5:30 to 6:30 at St. Luke's. It is definitely to support and advocate for tenants, right? But we do that by providing education to tenants. And so that's a good thing, right? That's what you want as a landlord. So we're also hoping that like that can involve like mediation or how can you be an accountable or good tenant for your landlord. So we want to make sure that you know that that's available. And that we're there to support tenants, but also to make sure that they're having good relationship and communication with their landlords. Okay, next steps. So we've got some great things on the horizon. We would love for some landlords. We're looking to start a landlord advisory board, which we haven't started yet, but we're having conversations around it. So if you're interested, Lear, do you have cards here?
Yes, I do. I have Lakeshore Cap business cards. Just call the front desk number and you will get pointed to me in some type of capacity. I just don't have an email yet. So they will direct you towards me somehow.
Okay. I'll get my business cards up too. So if you're interested, this would really be a group of landlords that could help us like make the best decisions in the work that we're doing as a coalition and how we can not just support tenants, but support landlords. Because we know if we're supporting landlords, we're supporting our tenants, right? And we're supporting people in maintaining their housing or even getting access to housing that they may not have had before. We'd love if you would join your local coalition, whether that be the Lakeshore, we just meet quarterly, or the Sheboygan County Housing Coalition, we do meet monthly there. But even if you just want to hop on and see how things are going, or if you want to sign up to get the minute notes, so you know what's happening or what's being updated in the county, that would be great. And then obviously, we're just hoping that you will connect with us and provide resources to your tenants, and so that we can support you as landlords, and then you can support your tenants in return. We do have some information, I think, about like the actual cost of what it is to evict a tenant versus keeping a tenant in and potentially curing like back owed rent. So we will pass that around too. So I think our business cards in that.
Well, you should just leave them back there for people to take.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
They're on that back table if you want to take some. It goes through and it breaks it down very nice. Like the cost analysis between evicting someone and if you're actually going to make money off that. Not saying that if somebody's really breaking the law and destroying your unit, absolutely move forward with eviction.
Yeah.
I'm a housing provider first and foremost, but we also have a program at Lakeshore Cap where we are the landlord, and I've had to evict somebody in that program. And it's never a good feeling, but it does happen. I get it. But if there's ways to remedy those situations without anything happening, it can save you a lot of money in the long run.
Yeah, and I think just to remember too, I think something I'd want to note on is I mentioned the complexity of being human before, and I bet you didn't guess when you were signing up to be a landlord that you would be a social worker as well. But to keep in mind that like it's a really hard job, and you're dealing with human beings who are complex and they have needs, and so that's part of where we really want to make sure that we're working together. And I think that's it. Are there questions?
If you ever have questions, like I said, our cards are there. You'll figure out. Lakeshore Cap will figure out a way to get anybody to me if you have questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh. Should we leave this up here?
Thank you.
Hello. Okay. Hi, we are with Sheboygan County Division of Public Health, and today we're going to be talking about lead in rentals. I am Chelsea, and I'm a lead risk assessor and a registered sanitarian. All of our information, we have a bunch of packets back there. We're going to go through this really quick. So feel free to grab anything back there. There's handouts, and we have a bunch of QR codes throughout. That's actually going to lead you to a lot of resources throughout our presentation.
And I'm Dave, excuse me, I'm Dave Rodiger. I've been with Sheboygan County for 23 years, and I've been a lead risk assessor for about the last 20 years. And as Chelsea mentioned, we're going to talk real briefly about lead and try to go through, just give you guys some historical background with regards to lead, the health effects of lead, what can property owners do, the public health role with lead, and then give you some takeaways and some resources for your properties. So with lead in that, this would be a slide that is lead in its natural property, and lead is not only in the natural form, but we have lead throughout our houses. We have lead in gasoline. We've got lead batteries, lead in pipes, solder, ammunition, pottery, and most of all, we find lead in paint. And in 1978 was when lead was basically taken out of outlawed by the United States and that. So when Chelsea and I are looking at houses, that's one of the first questions is what's the age of the house? Because if we see something 1978 or prior, we will assume that we're gonna find lead somewhere.
And then DHS has a great map kind of looking at lead poisoned children under the age of 6, and they're looking at 5 or above, so 5 or above micrograms per deciliter. We can see that the darker the blue, the higher the rates are for lead, and you could see Sheboygan. And I don't know if you guys can see from back there, but look at Milwaukee. So we have increased levels in Sheboygan, so it is a big deal. And then there's another map. You can see the QR code over here. As we're comparing our age of housing, we can see the darker colors are showing our older houses, our percent of older house stock. And if you look at the lead poisoning, there is a direct correlation between those. So obviously the older the house, we could see the more risk and the higher rates of lead within those homes. So next, why are we here? Why do we care so much about lead? Lead is so important. It is important because it can affect anyone. It can affect adults, pregnant women, and especially children. So we're looking at children. We're looking at them because they have a 4 to 5% or times rate of absorption because they're smaller. And so in our department or our division, we look at the effects of lead in children. It affects them even at low concentrations. It affects their central nervous system, can cause permanent brain damage, lowering IQ and causing behavioral problems. The worst part is that it's irreversible once those symptoms start. But there's hope, everyone. So these are completely preventable. There are things that we can do as property owners that we can prevent lead poisoning in children and potentially adults. So let's take a quick look at some of these.
And so like I mentioned, if the house was built 1978 or prior, the things that we would want to do is to, first of all, identify and then maintain and repair that property, proper cleaning, and then also we need to make sure that we inform the tenant that there is that possibility of lead in the house. So with identifying in that, the things that we're going to want to look for are like chipping, peeling, and deterioration of paint, friction areas such as in windows, doors, and stairs. Where children play, we would want to look, say, like for instance, if we're looking inside of a room maybe, are they, like for instance, when mom or dad come home from work, are they standing at the door, or at the window looking out and then they're chewing on the sills? So those are things we want to look at. And again, in the house, if we have things like condensation, there is things like mini blinds. If you want to flip to the next one, Chelsea. Yeah. So things like, we want to look at like mini blinds, because some of those have lead in them. The floors in that, we want to make sure that we maintain and repair those, so we can replace them, make it easier to clean. Up above on the left there, we've got bare soil. With that, we would want to either maybe put stone over the top of it. We could use mulch. We could seed the area for grass in that. And with the paint in that, the big thing is using like that there, it says Child Guard, which is basically a paint that's used to encapsulate the lead. Maintaining and repair, things that we don't want to do is we don't want to dry sand, dry scrape, power wash, or use heat, like a heat gun in that to burn the paint in that, because there again, we would put that lead paint into the air and it's breathable. At the top on the right there, if we do anything where we're gonna have to disturb those surfaces, then we would need to be looking at somebody that is a lead-safe renovator or a lead-safe contractor. So when we get into those situations, that's when the state says, hey, now you've gotta look at somebody commercial to basically make sure that that lead is not getting into the environment.
And the Lead Safe Renovator course is something that anyone can take, and I think it's only like a day. So basically, if we're disturbing any of that paint, we want some type of certification. And if your house was built prior to 1978, you want to assume that paint is lead if it's being disturbed in any way.
And then from the cleaning standpoint, use disposables. If you're using disposables, clean an area, throw it away, start with another area in that, because you don't want to just keep bringing it from area to area to area. As far as wet cloths, you can use those also. If you're washing anything, like, if you use something for cleaning in that, you don't want to wash it with your clothes, because there again, you could push that lead from the cloth into your clothing and that. So wash all your clothes separate. If you're vacuuming an area, you'd want to use a HEPA vac, not just a standard vacuum cleaner, because there again, you can aerosolize the lead dust, and again, it's breathable.
And then lastly, informing our tenants. So as kind of previously stated, providing them with the EPA pamphlet is really crucial. It gives a lot of information. We have some copies back there too, and keeping that communication open to them, allowing for tenants to let you know if they see deterioration, and kind of having things pointed out. Because if something would happen where their child would be elevated in their blood lead levels, then you guys had that communication previously, and it wouldn't be so difficult as it would be for the first time. So what does public health do? There are two areas of expertise. I think previously the nurses have come, public health nurses. So we're environmental health. Public health nurses really deal with or work with the families to try to mitigate and educate the families on things that they can do. Whereas environmental health really works with the environment, looking at the sources and how to reduce lead within their environment. So just a few statistics we'll go through really quickly. For the public health nursing side, this is from 2024. These are the amount of lead tests that were provided to us. So there was 1,934 lead tests. About 15% of that was above 3.5. So that's 3.5 is the magic number for us. That's when nurses start to do our education visits. And so if we're looking at that, that's about 1 in 7 tests that we get back. Like, that's quite a bit. So with that everything at or above 3.5, we have done 80 educational visits within 2024. Some of those are over the phone. Some of those are in person. There were 2 children that were recorded to have had lead treatment. So that could include bowel cleanouts, chelation. Chelation is really difficult on a child. They have to be hospitalized. And just to give you kind of a background on that, that's not actually treating what is the damage that's already been done. That's permanent. That's just preventing any further damage to the nervous system. And lastly, 9 children were recorded to have had lead poisoning and also be in behavioral programs. I have to give a little caveat. There's not enough evidence to show that lead poisoning created those behavioral programs, but we still track them because we think it's really important because of the damage to the brain that's done. So for environmental health, we do lead risk assessments, what we abbreviate as LRAs, and we do clearances. Lead risk assessments are identifying the lead within the home and or environment. Clearances are done once mitigation has been completed. So this is just kind of a general idea of what we do. We also work with Lead Safe Homes program, so that would not be documented on here. Partners for Community Development. And so we have a map up there kind of going through the locations. You can see we're pretty centrally located in the city just due to the older housing stock. There is service line lookups that we utilize when we're doing our investigation so we can see whether those are lead service lines or not. We haven't seen that lead in water is the primary source of the lead poisoning. So typically just running the water for a little bit is going to mitigate that. So typically our highest reasoning for lead poisoning in children has been paint and dust. And then we've closed at least 9 investigations 2024 informally. Sometimes these cases can go long term. So just for a little bit of background. When we're looking at lead risk assessments, so when we do lead risk assessments, they're mandated by state statute. So we have levels in the state statute. If we have 215 or higher in Venus or 120 Venus for lead, or a 2120 Venus sample, we're required per state statute to go into those homes and do a lead risk assessment. And it's not to penalize, it's just to identify that source and get that source under control so we're not poisoning that child. Because like we said previously, that is lifelong effects on them. So we'll do dust wipe samples of the floors, windowsills, we'll do soil samples, and we'll do paint chip samples. We house an XRF, which gives instantaneous results. Once that's all done, we get all of our results, we put everything into a nice report and provide where we found the lead and how to mitigate it. So with that, so here are just some of the sources that we found. I mean, we have done quite a few, and we find them all in the locations that you wouldn't even think of. So windows are the biggest source of lead that we see, and it's particularly the trough, which is where the window comes up and down. That will aerosolize the lead into the air, and as children are going on the surface, they put their hands in their mouth. That is typically where we see the highest source of lead. We see it in the floors, doors, those friction areas. We see it on the sidings. This one in the middle there is a laundry chute we found the lead. So it can be anywhere. But the thing to note here is that lead is not a hazard unless it's deteriorated. So if it's intact, that's why we talked about the encapsulation, lead encapsulation paint. If it's intact, it's not considered a hazard. We will frequently do a little bit more investigation and potentially a little bit more sampling when it comes to those friction or impact areas. So between doors, high traffic areas, just because the risk of that is so high of becoming more deteriorated. And then for clearances. So clearances, this is the evidence that is provided that we do the sampling for after a mitigation company or mitigation has been done for lead. We do dust wipe samples, floors and sills, and do soil samples depending on how soil has been mitigated. A passing clearance is the only way to release a human health hazard order. So if we do those, if we do a lead risk assessment, we have to get a clearance done in order to completely close out that location. It's very important. A clearance does not provide evidence that the house is lead free. That is going to be a completely different type of inspection that's done. So with that is why it's so important to maintain those properties so that no new lead happens, including just taking care of the mitigation of any deteriorated paint. So key takeaways for you guys today. Children, really, they are so susceptible to that lead. Their absorption rate is so much higher. We can prevent this together. And so just maintaining those properties, repairing any deteriorated paint or area. And then lastly, just informing those tenants, keeping that open communication really helps and goes a long way when there is a lead poisoning. And, you had talked to them about that and went through that information. This last slide is just resources. So like I was saying before, we work with LSHIP or Lead Safe Homes program quite a bit. So we just want to give a few of these. These are some grant programs or loan programs. And depending on who your tenant is and or income, if there is lead in the home, you may qualify. So all those QR codes and resources are all in the PowerPoint for you. I don't know. I know we're going over. So if you guys, if you have any questions, we have our cards back there. But if there's any burning desires. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello? Hey there, my name is Marcus Renzelman. I work for the Sheboygan Police Department. Please bear with me. This is my first time presenting, so I'll be learning with you. So structure of the police department, Sheboygan is divided into 74 neighborhoods. If you don't know your neighborhood, like it was brought up before, you can go onto our website. You can look at the map, click on your neighborhood. You just zoom in to where your streets are, and you can find out A, which neighborhood you are, B, your neighborhood officers, and then contact information. I think that was your question earlier, right? Yeah. Let's see. So overall, we have a lot of neighborhood complaints. A lot of them are grass, paint, cars, that kind of thing. So they become deferred complaints. So they go directly to that neighborhood officer. And then that way you normally don't have an officer coming to your house that same day, but they are made aware of what the issue is. Again, if you need to call us, non-emergency number is the best option. If it's an emergency, call 911, but that's usually not a neighborhood issue. This is what the neighborhood maps look like. So again, lots of colors. And then if you click on the neighborhood, so in this case, it's downtown. First shift would be Officer Brush. Second, Officer Hang, who's actually now on first. And then Woody, who doesn't work here anymore. So it gets updated, trust me. But this is what it looks like. Find your neighborhood and then go from there. Community policing. So a philosophy that emphasizing community involvement in crime prevention efforts through these three components. So community partnership, working with the community, organizational transformation, and problem solving. Okay, so basically we want to take these three things, everybody works together and we're solving problems. Community problem solving continued. Police will still respond to emergencies, like I said, but a lot of them, it says they're not police related. They're not criminal majority of the time. So again, it's the long grasses, the messed up houses, broken windows, cars, that kind of thing. You can always give us a call, send us an email, that kind of thing. But we want to come by, talk to you, figure out what the root of the issue is. Because Again, it's not always criminal. It's usually something else is going on. And then again, it gives us more time to spend with you guys, talk to you, and figure out what's going on. A couple of our theories. So this one is the Sarah model. So it starts with scanning over on the right-hand side, goes down to analysis, response, assessment. So basically, we come to where you are, we look at what's going on, we talk to you, try and figure out some solutions, see if that worked, follow up. If it worked, solid. If not, let's see what's going on. CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design, is another one. You see this more in the bigger environments, so like larger apartments and stuff like that, not so much the single family homes. So basically you have a number of different key points. I'm not going to bore you with it too much because, like I said, unless you have a multi-home kind of apartment, I don't know if any of you guys have it. They're perfect. So it looks like this. So on the left, you have a high risk. So basically through the environmental design, you don't want to have your front yard area looking just plain Jane because basically criminals who are opportunistic are looking at this house and saying, hey, I can run up to that house. I can break that window. I can run in, snatch and grab and get out of there and nobody's going to be the wiser. Second one, you have a single entry to the gate. They got to go all the way around. Those little bushes in the back could hide cameras, could have people back there. They never know. They're trying to watch out for, people working, looking, trying to figure out what's going on. So basically, the right side is the low risk because there's more things getting in the way. Broken windows theory in criminology that first arrived in 1982. So basically, it's saying in an area where it looks like crap, people are going to treat it like crap. Okay, so if you have broken windows, dirty cars, that kind of thing, all of a sudden they're walking past, they're like, nobody cares about this area. Let me throw my litter. Let me break more windows. Let me leave this car. Nobody's going to do anything about it because the last one was left there. So if we make it look nice, everybody's going to treat it nice. Kind of another point that we focus on with landlords especially is nuisance. So that's where it comes down to lots of grass is getting overgrown, weeds, that kind of thing. Paint's not getting replaced. There's a bunch of garbage on the outside, abandoned autos, stuff like that. So if we come over to your residence and there's those types of things going on and it continues, so we come and talk to the tenants, we come and talk to you guys, nothing's getting replaced, nothing's getting repaired, nothing's getting fixed, cut, whatever we came up with together, then it's going to become a nuisance. And if it becomes a nuisance, that's where the fines start coming in. That's where the, money starts coming out of pockets and people start, blaming each other. So they place a strain on law enforcement agencies, community overall. And then it says it leads to a higher tenant turnover. In my personal experience, it's usually that one tenant is trying to stay there longer and they're trying to be that problem. But again, it's not always that they're trying to be problematic. It could be because of their age or experience, or they just don't know, because there are a lot of ordinances that people don't know, understand, and then if they don't know, they don't know, right? Okay, so for it to become a chronic nuisance, it needs to be 3 or more qualifying events in a 12-month period. So that includes people calling about abandoned autos, long grasses, stuff like that. It doesn't involve domestics and sex assaults and stuff like that. So if you hear it, you see it, they call it in, and it's 12-month period and there's 3 or more, we can come in and we can create that chronic nuisance. But more often than not, we had already come to that household. We had talked to the tenants. We had talked to you guys, try to figure out a plan prior to that. So it's not just we got 3 calls, here it comes. Chronics get citations, not only to the tenants, but later on to you guys. Billing, so if it continues, so every time the police department shows up for a call, either the tenants or the landlords can get billed, so more money coming out of people's pockets. And then after a certain period of time, it becomes zero tolerance. So every time we come to that property, anything and everything we see, you're getting cited or arrested for it. Zero tolerance. Again, we're working with you guys. It's not just we show up after those 3 calls or complaints and we just start a chronic nuisance, okay? We're working with the tenants. We're knocking on their doors. We're pointing out the problems, providing information, letting them know what the actual issue is. But if it comes down to it, that's what happens. Another unfortunate situation, like what Meg was talking about, is drug and gang situations. So if there is drug and gangs in a apartment or one of your properties, we can go a different route. So any building or structure used to facilitate drug or gang activities, distribution, delivery, or manufacture of controlled substances, drugs, any building or structure where those take place, or meeting places of criminal gangs. So it's kind of the definitions for it. If it meets that criteria, we fill out this paperwork, nuisance property, which is specifically drug or gang related, and then we come over, talk to you guys, we provide the documentation, and then we go from there. It really doesn't happen that often, but again, it is another resource in our toolbox. So that way, if it is specifically drug and gang, and a lot of these guys and gals know the laws and ordinances, so they think they can do whatever they want, this is another resource that we have, not only to protect people, but to help you guys when they are, not able to be evicted for whatever reason. Nuisance abatement. So basically, this is showing you where you can find the local ordinances. So if you go to the City of Sheboygan website, so www.sheboyganwi.gov, you go to residents, scroll down, municipal codes, click on there. It'll pop up with the ordinances, and then you can search in the search bar, specifically in this case, nuisance, but anything and everything that you can think of. If you're, concerned about long grass and how long, it's allowed to be. Chickens is another one that comes up quite often. Abandoned autos, whatever. So Sheboygan Police Department's vision for landlords: use of leases with clearly defined rules. I feel like that has been brought up a number of times for you guys. Make sure it's in writing. Make sure it's appropriate. Get your attorney if you need it. Go from there. And then if you guys have any questions for us, you can always reach out as well. We are more than willing to talk to you guys, answer as many questions as we can, and try and provide resources and basically just try and figure it out with you. Like it says there, we want to work with you guys. We want to talk to you. We want to know what your problems are. I go to a number of neighborhood meetings where I talk to folks and face to face trying to figure out what the actual problems are, because reading it in an email gets lost. So this portion is open records request. Back to the attorney side of it. If you need that documentation or reports, you can always come in person and ask for an open records request. It says here you can do it on our website and request it. At the top it says it's not going to happen immediately, so give it a couple of days. They'll reach back out to you with that information. Okay. So neighborhood officers who know both the community's problems and its residents can link people with other public and private agencies, that can help solve community concerns. So Sheboygan Police Department works with a number of different agencies. They reach out to us, we reach out to them, we work together. I don't know how many times I've talked to building inspection or other attorneys, as well as the fire department, the medical teams, literally anybody you can think of, including your local businesses. We work together, we try and figure out what the problems are, and we try and nip them in the butt, okay? If there is a problem, don't wait. Find out what it is. See if you can figure it out yourself, because what I tell people a lot of the times is you guys know who your tenants are, or should, right? Talk to them, see if you can figure it out on your end, and if not, give us a shout out. We can always come and do a peace officer, we can always come and stand by, or we can help you with resources. But again, if you see something, say something. Pretty common sense, but a lot of people miss it because they think, what can I do? And then if you're ever concerned, like I said earlier, you can read the ordinances, look it up yourself, ask friends, family, whoever you got. Any questions? Cool beans. Appreciate your time. I do have a little handout And then I can also give you guys my business card. I am the South Side Beat Officer for the city of Sheboygan. The north side is Allison Meyer. She's not here for this wonderful presentation, but if you guys have anything, feel free to email me or her. Sound good?